welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your hosts, Buddy Sotello Esquire and Evan Ginzburg. And this week, Evan Ginzburg, would you like to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. My buddy Steve Ludwig from Steve Ludwig's Classic Pop Culture, from PlanetLudwig.com, from the Beatles Hour. This is his shirt right here. And welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks, buddy. I'll tell you, it's so nice of you guys to invite me on. I appreciate it. And, you know, Evan, you said of the Beatles Hour and Steve Ludwig's Classic Pop Culture, formerly co-host with Evan Ginzburg on Legends TV.
That's right.
We go back a few years.
Yeah, also both teachers.
Both teachers, both live to tell the tale.
That's right, survivors. Yep.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you get involved in professional wrestling? What's the first, the origins of how you first got started with wrestling?
All right. Well, I'm 66 years old, so you guys are babies. I remember, I think it was on Channel 5 or Channel 9 in the New York area. Ray Morgan was the wrestling announcer. I don't know if that name sounds familiar, but
yeah.
I remember clearly Bruno Sammartino, who's my hero, would always come on and he would say, Mr. Morgan, you know, in that Bruno accent. And it's just every Saturday night, my older brother Bill and I, we had to watch wrestling. It was just, it was like monster movies. We love monster movies too, my brother and I. And it was, you had to watch wrestling. It was just, couldn't wait for it to happen. It's good versus evil. And it was cool. And there was blood back then, you know, which has kind of calmed down a bit now. But I finally got a chance to meet some of my wrestling heroes a few years ago. I have some pictures with me that I'll share with you guys in a few moments. But it's just always been a part of my life, buddy. Really, since I was a young teenager. Yeah, 13, 14, even before that. It just, it was part of my television viewing.
What was your first live match that you attended?
First live match, believe it or not, is many years after, but I saw the debut of Jake the Snake Roberts at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And it was just, you know, it was like a circus in a good way.
Okay.
It was just so like larger than life. And you know what? Maybe before that, I did see Bruno at Shea Stadium.
Right.
I think that was before Jake the Snake. I'm not sure.
Was that the Larry Zbyszko match?
Yes. Yep.
1980.
Oh wow! Well, even that's pretty legendary.
Okay, yeah.
It's the only lose and leave town match that actually has held up over the years.
Yeah. You know, speaking of Larry Zbyszko, we had there was this. It's like a VFW hall close to where I live, and they used to have wrestling matches there. And Larry Zbyszko was on the card, and I'll never forget this. Of course, we got there early enough, so we sat in the front row. And Zbyszko was thrown out of the ring or something, and he was walking around. And I remember reaching out and just touching his forearm, and it was like a rock. Yeah. And I said, holy smokes, you know, for people who still, I don't know why, think that these guys are not athletes, just incredible. I said, how does this guy get so strong? And it's incredible. I mean, wrestling is just, I know they say, oh, it's, you know, you guys have heard it more than I, but it is just the greatest. I'm not too happy with today's wrestling, really, but I can't remember the last time I watched a complete Raw.
Yeah.
But you know, I just loved it. Can I share a couple of pictures with you?
Yeah, please. Good.
I have them here. I just have to lean out of frame. Now this is one from Las Vegas. I guess it's late 90s. I'll just put it up in front of me. Can you make out who that is?
Ultimate Warrior.
Ultimate Warrior. At the time, it was Coliseum Video who distributed the wrestling. And yep. A fellow teacher and I owned a video store. I don't know too many teachers who didn't at one time or another have a second job. But so we owned a video store. So every summer we would go to the VSDA, Video Software Dealers Association convention in Las Vegas. And Coliseum Video was releasing a lot of their latest things on video. Ultimate Warrior was there. I have a couple others here for you. And
oh, I fell off. Yeah, there's the Hulkster.
There's a Hulkster coming through. He was very nice,
Yep.
the Hulkster, you know. He asked where our store was. You know, how you doing? I said, I'm a teacher. He goes, oh, you know. He was real happy to hear that.
You had more hair back then.
Well, you can tell, you'll be able to tell the years, buddy, with the, you know, this is like, I say 90, 93, 95.
Like an oak, like a mighty oak, counting the rings.
Yes, I just grew too tall for my hairline. You know, if I was a little shorter, it would be perfect. But now there was a guy that I had met at a convention, not really a wrestler, but he's in that genre. I had to punch him around. He was a smart ass. So I couldn't take him anymore. But this is just before I beat the crap out of him. You can see Lou Ferrigno.
Oh, Lou Ferrigno, yeah.
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 I'm kidding, though. One of the sweetest guys around. Have you guys ever spoken to Lou Ferrigno or met him? Really nice. I mean, and
I have heard a lot of positive things about how he is. And he's still in good shape. He's still keeps himself in tremendous shape. I've seen some stuff about him.
Here,
real Hulk.
This was yes, that's right. Here, this is from a few years ago. Let me get the glare off.
Lawler.
The King Jerry Lawler. This was shortly after he had his heart problem, when he had his heart attack. And I had, back in 2003, I had open heart surgery. So anyway, I wrote a book, which, well, I'll get to in a minute, which is how I really met Evan. But I wrote a book, and I brought the book to this signing with Jerry Lawler. And, thank you very much, you know, and he put it down. And so I'm walking around the convention, and I went back just past his table, and I see his assistant leafing through the book. I said, wow, that's cool. You know, Jerry Lawler and his assistant didn't just throw the book away. So I never heard from him about it. Of course, I left my email address and all, but still, I thought it was pretty cool. Now, I mentioned, if I can, Evan, how we met.
Sure.
A former student of mine whom directed one of Evan's greatest documentaries, when he heard I had written a book, his mom, Marianne, said, you know, my friend Evan has a radio show. You know, maybe, I'm sure if I talk to him, he'll allow you to be on the show and talk about your book. One thing led to another. Evan asked me, hey, you know, I'm doing a TV show, a podcast on computing. Would you like to be a co-host? I said, yeah. I said, you talking to me? You know, who am I? I was happy to do it. From that, Evan found out I was such a fan of pop culture that he suggested that I contact Evan's engineer. He said, you know, speak with Rick, rest in peace, Rick Hendrickson. And he was my engineer. And then that led to my classic pop culture show. And so I have really just about everything pop culture-wise, media-wise, to thank Evan for.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. Now,
tell us about your shows.
I will, but I want to know, did I say it exactly as you had written it for me to say?
Yeah.
Your praise? Okay.
Yeah,
I think I got it.
The $10 check cash.
Yeah. Cash it right away, as a matter of fact.
Let me just say something. Let me just say something quickly about Rick Hendrickson. You know, before everybody and his mother had a podcast or radio show or TV show, Rick Hendrickson was out there at the very beginning doing wrestling shows and MMA shows, and he passed away at 34 years old.
Yeah.
So he was really a pioneer in this industry, and unfortunately, most people wouldn't know his name. So I think it's nice that we're both acknowledging him today because this guy was doing it before virtually anyone.
I remember, Evan, I had a guest on one of my pop culture shows. His name was Dinky Dawson. Not a an everyday name, but he was the road manager for early Fleetwood Mac, Steely Dan. He was a big shot. He had his own sound engineering company, and Rick at the time was my sound engineer. And I turned the show over to them. Dinky and Rick were just going on and on about all these, and it was so great. I mean, Dinky was very cool, and Rick was just so knowledgeable. And like you said, he was a great guy. He knew his stuff, and I knew if he was engineering my show, no matter what happened, he would somehow, make things right.
He was a brilliant guy. I mean, whatever he was interested in, it was almost like encyclopedic. Like he knew his MMA, he knew his wrestling, whichever music genre he was into. I mean, he was an interesting guy, and it's a shame, 34 years old. It's young.
Mm-hmm. So listen, you said to me, you asked me to tell you about my shows. I'll do it quickly. They're at planetludwig.com. I have a Beatles hour, and I have a Steve Ludwig's Classic Pop Culture hour. Look at this. You're perfect, Evan. But again, the check is in the mail with the other one. But I want to show you. I'm like a pop culture nerd. I'd like to share a couple of things with you guys, if I may. I'm going to show you something. It's going to, at first, appear very inconsequential, and I want to. It's small, and hopefully sizes and everything. But you guys see that it's a piece of metal.
Okay.
It's a fragment. Okay.
That's what it looks like.
And I got this from a gentleman who later was a guest on my show. Before I give you a clue, do you have any idea whatsoever this might be from?
That was shrapnel that came out of Ringo Starr's head during World War II. No, I don't know.
Elbow.
Okay.
Not the head. No, it was, I'll give you I printed out the newspaper article.
Wow.
Oh, it's a piece of the Hindenburg.
That's a piece of the Hindenburg.
Wow. Only you would have that.
Only. And this was gotten from an ambulance driver from the Hindenburg, who took a piece of it, and this guy Scott Michaels, who was a guest on my show of Dearly Departed Tours, he had some of these things that he had put up for sale, and I said, I have to be able to own a piece of the Hindenburg. I mean, some people might think I am out of my mind.
Because it brings back great memories.
That's right. Yes. Good times. All those good times.
The explosion. It was beautiful.
And if you only collect like another 2 trillion more pieces like that, you can rebuild it yourself.
I actually want them. I want some bones and some teeth, but I'll settle for this. May I? I'll kill myself if I don't do this. I just want to thank my nephew Billy Ludwig because he really set me up on Skype. I wish I would have listened to him, but I said, Billy, I got to at least give you a heads up because he would let me get in touch with him during the week, make sure things worked out. So thank you, Billy Ludwig.
Can I quickly tell you a story before I forget?
Mm-hmm.
I was a teacher back in the 80s, and they were quote unquote casting for the Challenger. They wanted, this is a true story. They wanted a teacher on board the Challenger. Mm-hmm. I'm getting the name right?
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I actually contacted them, and they said, sir, we're sorry. We appreciate you contacting us, but we need a teacher that has at least 5 years experience. And at the time, I only had like 2 or 3. Then the thing blew up. I actually contacted them to be on board. I couldn't make this up.
Yeah. I could have been, this is terrible. I could have been showing a piece of the Challenger right now.
That's right. That's
Evan
right there.
With Evans, that's terrible. I'm going straight to hell anyway.
Well, no, I mean, I have my own little cross of fate. I was flying on 9/11, and I was supposed to fly from Los Angeles to San Francisco. The flight that I was on was a United flight that was due from Newark. Do you know which flight that was?
Wow.
That was one of the ones that hit the tower.
Wow.
That plane was supposed to come pick me up and drop me off in San Francisco later that day.
Wow.
So you never know what fate's gonna offer you.
My brother, my younger brother Tom, and rest his soul as well, we lost him to cancer, but he was scheduled to go to, he worked in New York, and he was between gigs, he was going to go to the unemployment office, which was right down in that area. It was a Tuesday, and he just didn't feel like going that day, and he didn't go. But he said that area was like covered with everything. So can you imagine? He just decided not to go to unemployment that day. So it's good that he was lazy.
And my cousin Serena was born in between tower collapses.
Wow.
Just in New York City, like a couple miles at New York General. So wow. Yeah, she was. Life has incredibly weird things. And right now, I'm dealing with the California fires, which are like not far away from my house. And this place is all looks like a Martian landscape right now.
I heard, and the air quality is horrible. They say
more horrible makes me than wish to get a trip to Beijing so I could improve my air quality.
Exactly. You wish there was like a nice blimp exploding so you could.
Yeah, fine.
Blimp air.
Fine. Yeah, we wouldn't notice it. A blimp exploding right now, we wouldn't even notice. You got firenadoes and lightning strikes.
You'd welcome it.
It's hey, 2020.
Like days.
Making wonderful memories all year long. 2020.
Yeah, exactly. So listen, we're speaking of pleasant things. May I share some other?
Sure. Yeah. This is great stuff.
Good. Now here, hang on. I'm glad I have my folders. Here we go. Now I think most people
need some musical interlude while you're like off screen.
I'm sure most people have at least heard of Mariska Hargitay. She's on Special Victims SVU, and here's a picture of she and her mom. Now her mother was actress Jayne Mansfield.
Right.
Who also died tragically. That's the theme of today's show.
Well, I am leading up to that, Evan. Yeah. You know me too well. No. Now, Jayne Mansfield was married to Mickey Hargitay. He was a Mr. Olympia or something like that.
He did some acting.
Yes. He actually appeared on an episode of SVU.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, to show, I wanted to show this too. I thought this was a pretty clever thing. That's Mariska and her mother. See how much they did resemble each other?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in 1967, Jayne Mansfield was in the front seat of a car. She had her driver and someone else in the middle of the front seat. In the back seat were three of her children, including Mariska Hargitay, 3-year-old Mariska Hargitay.
Wow.
It was nighttime. There were no drugs involved or anything, but coming around a bend, they smashed into a slow-moving truck and went underneath the truck. And Jayne Mansfield was, a lot of people think she was beheaded, but she had a wig on. The wig came off and she was scalped.
Sweet.
Okay? So.
And you have her scalp right here. Show the fans, Steve.
In a pickle jar.
Don't worry, I have something here, but I want to show you a picture, the horrible picture of the car.
Wow, yeah. This whole episode's uplifting.
Yeah. It's the feel-good hour.
That's right. Steve brings the joy.
And here's a picture of Jayne Mansfield lying on the ground.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So, in that, hang on.
I thought we were going to talk about Pokemon.
Oh, we're going to talk about... Wait a second, guys. All right, it'll come up.
Dead bodies equal ratings.
Dead bodies. I know. Cleavage and dead bodies. Well, anyway, I will find it before we say goodbye. But this now, the car went right underneath the back of the truck. And because, if you've ever seen one of these on the back of a truck, these bars.
Yeah, they put those to keep,
It's called the Mansfield bar. And ever since 1967, that's why trucks have that on the bottom.
Wow, I didn't
The
know
man,
that.
yeah, yep. Okay, so
you
hang
had
on.
my side mirror ripped off by one of those things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, truck wasn't paying any attention. Just took too wide of a turn, and I had a Honda Accord, and it's like right about that same height as the Honda Accord. I was really lucky I didn't have my arm hanging out the window. I would have taken my arm right off, and it wasn't paying attention. It just knocked my mirror off, and then I had to chase him like 5 blocks to like say, "Hey, you knocked my mirror off." So
All right, so I have some grim trivia for you guys. Who
Okay.
died by having their arm ripped off in a car?
oh,
Wasn't that Lefty? Who died?
just thinking of the Def Leppard drummer, but he didn't die, obviously.
Bessie Smith. Bessie
Oh.
Smith, the blues singer. She had her arm out of the car and it got ripped off, and she. Yeah.
I guess that gave her the blues.
So yes, we are gonna definitely call this a super uplifting episode. Gather the family around.
Steve Ludwig brings the joy.
I just found what I was looking for.
Okay.
So I told you that Jayne Mansfield was sitting in the front seat, the passenger seat. Well, this gentleman I mentioned before, Scott Michaels from Dearly Departed Tours, he bought that car, the demolished car. He has it on display in his museum.
Wow.
And this, okay, this is a piece of the carpet from the passenger side where Jayne Mansfield's feet were in that car.
Now you're creeping me out, Steve. We've crossed the line.
And I'm looking for the heel mark, but I can't see the heel mark of her shoe. But now I'm asking you two guys are very smart. What's wrong with me? Why do these things excite me?
It would take a team of psychiatrists to figure this out.
Everyone's interested in having a piece of history. I mean, that's why we have museums.
Yeah, true.
People love looking at things that are little pieces of huge moments, that have happened historically, and things you can say, I was there when something happened, or I had a piece of something when something happened. That's what the whole collectible industry is all about. So
I'm going to, buddy Evan, on your Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast, here's something that has never been seen on any podcast. Both a piece of the Hindenburg and the carpet from the Jayne Mansfield car wreck in the same room at the same time.
I'm glad I got up this morning.
That's right. After the show's over, I'm going to put a gun to my head.
Yes. Oh wait!
Was it the gun that was used in JFK's murder? Because we tie it all in on something like this.
I was in Ford's Theater. Speaking of guns, and they have the revolver or whatever, the pistol that John Wilkes Booth used to kill Abraham Lincoln. And just to see something like that, I mean, it didn't get me. I wasn't happy about it, but it's like, this is John Wilkes Booth's gun. I get so in awe of things like that.
Well, that's why when museums eventually open back up, I mean, right now this is all we got to go with is until we can.
Steve's collection. That's
if we can get back to the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art, then we've got pieces of a Hindenburg at least to check out.
Right.
So let's get back to wrestling a little bit.
Yep.
So explain to me a little bit more about especially does your show talk about wrestling and what eras does it really talk about?
It's really more music and pop culture. Although I did have, here's a picture for you, the great Lanny Poffo on my show.
Buddy.
And and this is actually a picture from the green room during Evan's show. I was going to call you Elvis. Evan's Legends TV show. And one of the nicest guys, if I could keep this microphone up, that would be very good. One of the nicest guys, really, Lanny Poffo.
He's a friend of the show for sure.
Yeah, I contacted Bob Backlund. So I bought his book. Haven't heard back from him though. That was about a month ago. But I'm hoping to have Bob back. I remember Bob Backlund too. I remember when he turned, he became a bad guy. I forget.
Late in his career.
Late in his career, yeah. And it was like
In the 90s, yeah.
what? That's something you couldn't believe.
Well, he had his presidential run. I don't know if you remember Bob Backlund.
Yep.
He ran for president. So
Diesel beat him for the title at the Garden. It was like in seconds. It was such a ripoff.
I remember going back to when I used to watch the wrestling shows in the 60s. Bruno and I forget who else, but they were going to be a tag team against two of the bad guys, two of the heel tag teams. Bruno was nowhere to be found, and we got word from Ray Morgan that Bruno's plane was late in landing, but they're going to have the match anyway because they're going to have the two heels against Bruno's partner. I'm trying to think of who it would have been, and of course his partner is getting destroyed. They're 2-on-1. They're killing him, blood, and all of a sudden, wait a minute. Bruno comes running from wherever with his suit still on. He's just got off the plane. His suitcase, but there was like a shirt or something hanging out of the suitcase. He was in such a hurry, and he comes into the ring, starts whamming him with the suitcase, and of course they won the match. But it's things like that are like, I remember at the time seeing, I said, "Oh my gosh, Bruno did make it!" Of course he made it, But it's that good versus evil thing that. And now there's a gray area now in wrestling with good versus evil. Don't you guys think?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously because you have a death of kayfabe, so that sort of goes along with it. Especially because people aren't playing any character wrestlers anymore. There are very few of those. That you don't have like character wrestling lends to the good and evil by its very nature. You have the good character like a hillbilly Jim. Or the Ultimate Warrior, or someone like that, and then you have the obvious heel characters like the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, and so forth. Kamala, the lately departed Kamala, and again, those guys all needed each other to you had to have enough good guys and enough bad guys so that you would have enough of those back and forth matches. Now, the kind of booking that goes into these matches, it really just seems like any two guys are in the ring at any point in time against each other.
Yeah.
And
what? Okay.
It
now,
hurts.
If I can turn the tables and ask you guys a question, each of you with your wrestling knowledge, what would fix WWE?
A team of psychiatrists.
Yeah, I mean, how did it go so wrong?
I really think that Vince is the source of the problem because he is like the king and dictator of everything that happens there. And I really do think it takes, to me, what would fix wrestling would be if AEW were to switch financial places with the WWE. I think that if AEW had the money that the WWE currently has, AEW would be doing much better with the product it has than the WWE would, especially if the WWE only had AEW's budget.
Mm-hmm. Evan?
So, I don't know. And then I think that both of those feds could learn a lot from what we see from a place like New Japan. I think New Japan has an amazing product. They've had one for many years. Vince takes the best out of New Japan and just crafts on it. He brings it into the WWE, and then he just destroys it like Gallows and Anderson. Yeah. Made them into a complete joke. They should have been a respected team. They shouldn't have been facing the Vikings every week. You know what I mean?
My answer to the question would be Vince is ashamed of wrestling. He doesn't even like to call it wrestling. He calls it sports entertainment. You have probably the greatest talent roster in history. I mean, debatable Crockett's NWA in the 80s with the Horsemen and Midnight Express and Road Warriors and Rock and Roll Express, etc. But they have this unbelievable talent roster, and there's very little wrestling. It's like you have AJ Styles, who's as great as anyone. Let the guy wrestle for 30 minutes. You don't need comedy. You don't need comedy that's not funny. Stilted, scripted promos. You don't need 82 commercials in between the matches that take you out of it. Just let them wrestle. They got so far removed from the wrestling. I mean, I watch a wrestling show for wrestling. Silly me. Silly
right.
You know?
What are you thinking of?
Sorry. I really liked the NWA product when it was on because that was a 1 hour show. And I think that you put yourself into a 1 hour parameter for getting a wrestling show put together. You cut out a lot of the BS that when you have two shows that are 3 hours long or an hour and a half, one that's 2 hours, one that's 3 hours, plus you have next and so forth. There's so much wrestling that the WWE has. It was better when it was concentrated into just, when I was younger, there was Saturday night, we would have like an hour of superstars of wrestling. There'd be some on Sunday morning, and then there'd be Tuesday Night Titans, on with the WWE. And then you'd have the Crockett stuff that was going on on Saturdays and Sundays at 3:05, and you wanted to catch that. And that was all you got. You got about 5 hours of wrestling for the whole week for two feds. Mm-hmm. If you're lucky enough to catch like the AWA for an hour or something like that, that was a big plus. But now there's an unlimited amount of it, and to a point where every storyline is being told within a week's worth of time.
The other thing, I was in South Korea last year with my wife, and in the hotel I was watching WWE. I don't speak Korean, so I was trying to watch stuff in English. So anyway, I'm watching WWE, and the shows are presented very differently there. They'll have a ton of commercials before the match, no interruptions during the match, and then a bunch of commercials after the match. Instead of having like all these commercials in the middle, you come back to the match, they take you away from the match again with the commercials, then you go back to the match. It just totally takes you out of it.
They were never used to be commercials during matches, exactly. No matter how long the matches were. It was,
and there's a lot of them. There's a lot. If you have 6, 7, 8 commercials in the middle of the match, it's like your brain is already away from the match.
And then they do the split screen stuff too. Where they'll do the commercials literally during the match itself.
Forget any kind of flow. I mean, there is no flow to a match. You know what else, guys? And Evan, I know you've written about this too, buddy. I'm assuming you probably are in the same feeling about this. They just cannot talk anymore, wrestlers. I mean, the greatest managers and wrestlers, they could just go on and on and on. Like, they would be set up with something. So you have a match this Monday. Oh, do I have a match? And then they would go off for like 5 minutes, and you either hated or loved the guy, but that is what made the match, made you want to. There's just none of that anymore. Like you said, it's too scripted also.
Johnny Valiant told me they would bring the Valiants and Lou Albano to a taping, and they would just go, August 29, Philadelphia Spectrum, Valiant Brothers against Dominic DeNucci and Pat Barrett, whatever. Boom, total improv. Total improv. And great improv, like comedy gold. And they don't have that anymore. It's scripted, it's robotic, it's boring.
And it's meant to fill up time. It's not meant necessarily to actually entertain anyone. It's that they have a 20-minute promo slot that they want to literally kill that time. And that's why I think when I think of the NWA product, no promos in the NWA went on for more than 5 minutes because they just don't have, in a 1 hour format, the time to waste on something like that. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that sort of in-studio, get them at, and then usually, the in-studio promo would be interrupted by another wrestler coming in, and before you know it, those two guys are fighting in the ring and around, ringside and all that sort of stuff. And maybe in this COVID era, we might go back to more studio-style wrestling, and I wouldn't be adverse to that.
No. If I could just throw a quick promo in here myself, I just want to let your listeners know that you two guys are nice enough. You're going to come on my show in September, first week in September, and I want to tell you guys, I have some very cool wrestling topics that we're going to get into. I don't want to even give anything away.
Oh, so you don't want to waste them on our show?
Yeah. No. I mean, we can do one now, but it would take too much time. And it's nothing like, oh, do you know this? Do you know that? It's all opinion stuff, but I think it's going to be some controversial things.
And I want to talk about monsters, so we got to leave some room for there, because that's where I leave poor Evan in the dust. He's like, oh, why do I book these guys?
I like monsters.
Yeah, not as much as I do.
Well, all right, buddy. I think when you had Brian Solomon on, author Brian Solomon, you guys were talking about Godzilla.
Yeah.
Isn't Godzilla one of your favorite movie monsters, buddy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Not the recent ones, but I'm more like the Godzilla versus Mothra, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster.
All right. So I have. Do you guys like the way I'm very organized here? I keep going.
We should have some kind of musical interlude to play.
This is not. Speaking of musical interlude, I wanted to show you guys this. The Captain Lou NRBQ.
I've heard that song. I've heard that.
I love NRBQ.
Yeah, me too.
Some say the man's not wrapped too tight. But when he's on the scene, everything's all right. Captain Lou.
For those who don't know, NRBQ know thousands and thousands of songs from all different genres.
Yeah.
They could do jazz like Sun Ra. They could do anything, those guys. They're brilliant.
But that's my favorite song of it.
Okay, buddy. This is for you. I purposely found this in my collection. Here is that in frame?
Yeah.
This gentleman.
Oh, yeah, that's the guy that played the guy in the suit.
The first 6 Godzilla movies.
He looks a little like
just recently, or not too long ago.
Yes, you're right, buddy. Yep.
Yeah, and that's how much of a fan I am. I know. I don't remember his name, but I absolutely recognize.
Yeah, you know what? The name is cut off. Naruka something like that. But yeah,
that's cool.
Isn't that very cool? It was cool to meet him too. All right.
Now tell me you've met Ultraman, and I'll really be impressed.
No, I can't impress you that much. But see if you guys know who this is. Horror genre. Evan, it's a movie, Evan, that you mentioned when Buddy was going on his camping trip. I think it was last week's show. You said,
"Oh, someone from Deliverance."
No, but I do have a picture of
Those have eyes.
No, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is Leatherface.
Oh, okay. I never knew what he looked like.
Gunnar Hansen. Really, I mean, you only get to speak with him for a few seconds, but very soft-spoken.
I don't think he had a beard. Did he have a beard in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
No, I don't believe so. No, I don't believe so.
You look, that one you stumped us on. So.
Yeah.
He's very quiet because he was traumatized by the film.
It was a pretty scary film. Even look back at it now, the grittiness of it and just kind of the low-budget element of it, that made it look scarier than any of the remakes they've done.
It's one of my. It's got to be in my top 5 horror films, and horror is my favorite genre. Based on a true story. All right, here we go. See if you recognize this stairwell. I'm sorry about the glare there.
I have no idea.
Okay. That's in Georgetown. That is where Father Karras fell down the stairs in The Exorcist. Those are the stairs.
I only fell down a couple stairs in 2016, and I broke my hip and femur. So, Lord knows what would happen if I fell down those.
And here's Linda Blair.
Nice.
So, what do you think? What do you think of guys who visit celebrity graves? Is that crossing a line into morbid, or?
I'm looking for. I have a picture somewhere here of. Oh, you mean like?
It's super popular in Los Angeles.
No, I don't think it's morbid. No, but this is Edgar Allan Poe's grave. I wanted to share with you guys. Mm-hmm. But no, I don't think so. I mean, why is it to get closer to the people, like you were saying, buddy? in some kind of a detached way by going to graves and having a
just,
carpet from a car?
I just took a friend of mine on a tour of the Marin County, and one of the places that I stop when I give people a tour in Marin County is St. Stephen's Church in Tiburon, which is where the funeral service for Jerry Garcia was.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants to see it. Everyone says this is where it was. It's a tiny, tiny church. I mean, my house is almost bigger than the church. Mm-hmm. But that's when he wrote about St. Stephen's in his song.
Okay.
He's talking about that specific little church in Tiburon, California, which is a tiny town itself.
There's a cemetery here in New Jersey. And of course, I couldn't find a picture to show you guys, but I take my word. It's Joey Ramone's grave. His real name is Jeffrey Hyman. I wonder why he changed his name. Yeah. But an interesting story. A buddy of mine, this is over 25 years ago, who had cancer and he beat it. He's fine. He's in my wedding party years ago. Anyway, his whatever you call the cancer doctor, oncologist. He used to see Joey Ramone. My friend Gary used to see Joey Ramone all the time in the same oncology office, waiting room, because Joey Ramone died of cancer. And every time he was there, Joey was with his mother. So, Gary didn't want to, advance or anything, but he once said to him, "How you doing?" He goes, "All right, not bad, not bad." He said, but he was just very, very quiet, Joey Ramone was. Always with his mother, always respectful to all the people. And I love to hear things like that about people that because I like the Ramones. Have you guys ever met somebody, you don't even have to mention names, but they turned out to be real jerks, heroes?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that a killer?
Oh, yeah, I was an autograph collector. Go ahead, buddy.
I'll throw a name right out there, flat out, is Rikishi. Rikishi was...
Really?
Yeah, he was terrible to work with. Gosh, wow. I would never want to work with him again. And Buff Bagwell was awful. I don't mind naming those names. Mm-hmm. Those guys were really unprofessional, and I'm amazed that they've gotten as much notoriety as they have. I mean, other guys have been. It's usually the ones that have had to pay their dues the hardest that are the most humble. Like a John Morrison, for instance. I worked shows with him when he was in California, and I remember sitting next to him while he was going through the whole Tough Enough contest. And he was as humble as he could be. Other guy, Brian Danielson, is that sort of way. Daniel Bryant was that way when I got to know him. So Samoa Joe, Frankie Kazarian, these are guys that really paid their dues. They don't like big time other people, but folks that get it too easy, too early, too fast, they are a handful to deal with, I think.
Yeah. How about you, Evan?
As a kid, I would stand outside Madison Square Garden, and the emphasis is the word kid. And Dusty Rhodes and Andre the Giant would never once sign an autograph for the kids. Never. Man. Okay. So meanwhile, superstar Billy Graham, Captain Lou, George the Animal Steel, nice as could be.
The heels, right?
Yeah. So they were really smartening us up. I mean, it's kids. I'm like, and George Steele's talking to us on TV. He couldn't talk, and
yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So Billy Graham couldn't be any nicer. Bruno was nice. I mean, he always signed, but I'll tell you, every time we asked Andre and Dusty, they didn't even look at you. It was very disillusioning because you really put these guys on a pedestal back then,
At that same place where I saw Larry Zbyszko that I told you about in the VFW hall, well, the Samoans were also on the
nice
card. Well, listen. So we waited around afterwards, and I was an adult at this time, Yeah. And so we went, but with the kids, I'm waiting around with my buddies for them to come out. And so they come out, and there's all kids around, and they said, we just said something. Hey, so glad we got to see you guys. Can we have your autograph? So one of the Samoans said, "Me, bad guy," and he was still he was still doing the kayfabe. So okay. So anyway, they just walked along. So we let them go, and then we moved up a little bit more, and I said, And when he was away from the kids, I said, "Guys, really, you put on a great show." They said, "Thanks, appreciate it." Just talked in a regular voice. But it's funny how they did the kayfabe around the kids.
Yeah.
And then
I'd say it's like about a 90 to 10% as far as like guys who are really cool to talk to and are, if you approach them, you're not going to catch them right in the middle of having a bite to eat or something like that. You're being respectful to them, or you're approaching them, after a show or something like that. I've found it's like 90-10 as far as like they're nice versus they're, and you never know if someone's having a bad day or, had a bad match or something.
They are human. They're human.
Let me say something quickly about that. Okay, so Greg Valentine's a friend of mine. He's 72 years old. He travels from Vegas to New York to do a couple of gigs. Okay, so a 72-year-old guy who's, in pain, his body hurts, he's not a kid anymore, travels 3,000 miles. You're running from booking to booking to booking to booking. And inevitably, you see somebody online go, Greg Valentine wasn't that friendly to me. It's like the guy's exhausted. Just exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good guy. It's like you can't always be on every second. It's the fans. It's like it's a sense of entitlement.
Mm-hmm. I understand that the Undertaker's a real good guy.
Okay, for $300 an autograph, he damn well should be.
Wow. Okay, he's not that nice a guy already.
Yeah.
I mean, he's respected among the wrestlers, from what I understand.
But
I'm sure he is, and he's done a lot. I mean, he's been a big factor for a while. But as I said, it's usually the guys that are in the mid card and on their way up. Like a guy like Gangrel, for instance. There's a super nice guy.
Yeah, really.
Really loved working shows with him. He worked for some stuff for Wrestling for Charity, the wrestling group that I'm still associated with. And he pals around not just with the boys, but with the fans too. And I always felt like when someone wanted my autograph, it was not that I had a lot of people ask me for my autograph, but when I did sign my autograph, that was one of the great honors of being part of professional wrestling. Is that some kid cared enough to
Good for you, buddy. Yeah.
Sign something on their poster was to me a real hey, they not only believe in me, but they like me enough to want to have my name on their wall for their formative years. So.
I mean, you mentioned Dusty Rhodes, Evan. Imagine how much that must have crushed those poor kids when they wouldn't sign for. Yeah, well,
and I'm telling you this 40 years later.
You never recovered from that, obviously.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, I have to ask you this. So you have multiple shows on pop culture, history, nostalgia. What is the line between appreciating and honoring the past and living in the past? Because I'm not a kid, and when people do there's been no good wrestling since the territories. There's been no good music since the 60s, 70s, 80s. There's been no good TV since back in the day. I always kind of cringed because, you did the show with me forever. How many great musicians did we have down there? How many great actors, etc.? I mean, to dismiss everything that's happened in the past 30, 40, 50 years, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that, because one of the great things is, for instance, I had a group called The Circle. It's a turn down day in Red Rubber Ball from the 60s.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, I recently had the founder, his name is Don Daneman, on, and they have a new album out, and I didn't even play Red Rubber Ball, Turn Down Day. I just played everything from his new album because it was, so great. And I said, we talked about Red Rubber Ball and so on, but I didn't even play a second of them. Afterwards, after the show, goodbye, I got an email from him. Said, you're the only person that played things from our new album. And he thanked me for it. And I said, well, why not? I said, it's great. I'm thinking to myself, these guys that we loved and grew up with are still doing stuff. And even if if there's like hip hop or whatever, I appreciate that so much more now than when it first came out, because I was just a hardcore rock fan. Rock was everything. But I mean, it's poetry. Hip hop is our day's poetry.
You hear a lot of older people, even black people, not just white people. They'll go, rap isn't music; it's just noise. And I'll be like, well, go see Public Enemy with a full band with meaningful
Mm-hmm.
lyrics. And you're absolutely wrong. You're absolutely wrong.
But then you also have, as you have the people saying that, there hasn't been any good music since the 70s or 80s. You have a lot of people from today, kids from today, saying that everything from the past was overrated. And so you have that juxtaposition too, where, people that are clearly like, I mean, I just had to, yell at somebody on the internet who was saying how Blazing Saddles was just a bunch of fart jokes. Yeah. I'm like, if you see Harvey Korman in his prime and Gene Wilder in his prime, and you don't see the funny that's there, then I can't help you. There's nothing I can do. I don't have a magic wand that can make you understand what's funny or not. But that was funny. That's funny. I know funny, and that was funny.
Steve, yeah. What about this? I understand somebody's in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever the case may be. And of course, they were younger, happier, more handsome, more beautiful, whatever, etc.
More hair.
Whatever. Now, where to me, it reaches a point of absurdity is when they go, the 60s were a magical time. The 70s were perfection. The 80s was heaven. And I'm like, what about Jim Crow, the Vietnam War,
all civil rights,
the crack epidemic? I mean, it wasn't
John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy. You're right. And I was a child of the 60s. And peace and love and everything. That had to be one of the most violent decades in our history. If not the most violent, but I mean, the Civil War.
They shot down Medgar Evers on his front lawn.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I was going to show you this. It might be a good time. I have this Life magazine about from after President Kennedy was assassinated. Some more things I like to collect. But the 60s was. Even John Lennon said, you know what, flower power didn't work, but we carry on and we still try to make it better. The 60s were a wonderful time, great music, Woodstock, but there was also Altamont Speedway, the Rolling Stones concert, when the Hells Angels killed people in the same decade. So
the Watts riots and things like
that.
The
Watts riots, yeah, absolutely.
No, it's I don't know how history is going to judge 2020, though. That's going to be, maybe make all this stuff look kind of pale in comparison.
I think it's going to be its own history book, buddy. 2020. Here's history of the world, and here's 2020.
But we still have the rest of the decade. Maybe it will be a good decade.
Yeah.
After this year, it's got to get better. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Continue.
No, I was going to say, now these were the good old days. You guys know who that is?
That's the guy from the Munsters.
No, close.
Is it Lon Chaney?
Nope, that is Butch from the Little Rascals.
Oh, okay. Butch from the
Little Rascals. Okay.
Butch and William. Tommy Bond, his name was.
Okay.
I don't know why I just threw that in there.
He looks like the guy from the Munsters.
Yeah, I have him here somewhere, but it's such a mess right now. I'll never be able to find Butch Patrick. He was on my show. And he talk about a nice guy. He was we'll talk about Eddie Munster, Butch Patrick. He had he was celebrating his sobriety. He had a pretty bad drinking problem, and beforehand, of course, I okayed it with him in my text to him. I said, "Can we bring it up?" He said, "Absolutely," and he was so open about it. And again, we didn't talk too much about the Munsters. We talked more about human interest stuff. And Evan, you are the one who gave me that tip, that human interest is really the whole thing. You know, it's okay, you mention so on and so forth, but to talk about someone as a person, I think they appreciate that more than anything else. And I thank you for that information. And for
Sure.
that
There's this jazz radio host where he'll go in 1937 on the third take, and he knows like every minute detail. And to me, it wears me out after a while. You know.
Yeah.
Ask about, you know, what was this person like? What was the backstory? Just not a bombardment of information. The wrestling people are like that. Just a bombardment of information.
Some
guys
are,
have-
yeah.
I'm sorry,
sure.
buddy.
You
Jeff-
know, some are really focused on the minutia of it, and we like to, you know, definitely capture as much about your personality as we can. The only thing is that we're running out of time, so I wanted you to be able to promote your shows and any books and stuff like that. So while we still have a few minutes left.
Well, if we have the last few minutes, I want to share Paul McCartney from the '60s, a real Beatle doll from the '60s.
That's worth a lot of money.
It is, but something like this, I wouldn't get rid of, just because you know.
Hey,
It's Paul.
Steve, I got 4 Beatles banks. What are those worth?
Is there money in them?
No.
Go on eBay, you'll find out.
Yeah. If they're from the '60s, they're absolutely worth.
Those
something,
are originals, Sgt. Pepper.
I would like Buddy said, I would go on eBay.
Yeah, go on eBay and see what they've got. So yeah, please promote your show again. And
well, I first of all, thank you guys so much for having me on. I appreciate it. It's just all you have to do is go to planetludwig.com, Ludwig like the drums there, and you can buy one of those T-shirts.
It has a peace symbol.
Yes.
Nice.
See? In honor of the '60s, I should also have some graves too. For the
There
60s.
you go.
Look at that. But yeah, we had. I don't know how much time we had, but I had some of the nicest people on the show were Leslie Gore. She passed away, but Question Mark from Question Mark and the Mysterians, 96 Tears.
Oh, I think from the NWA.
Well, he had found out. Now he's kind of he can be kooky. I've had him on 5 times because he's so interesting. He's 1,000 years old. He was born on Mars. Okay, so that's really sets it up. After our interview, and you know we stopped recording, he said to me, he said, "Your brother has cancer, right?" I said, "Yeah." He had made up a whole list of healthy foods that I could pass on to my brother.
Wow.
And he talked just like a regular person, you know. And I mean, he was Question Mark
on
the show,
on air, yeah.
And yet he took the time. He didn't know me from Adam. He took the time, you know. So there's so many nice people that you talk to. It's you know. I wanted to mention Question Mark because it was.
And
really,
talk about your book, please.
Oh well, you know, I was always told by my publisher to carry the book around. It's called "See You in CCU." A lighthearted tale of my open heart surgery.
Wow.
And here's a quick picture of me in the hospital.
Did you survive?
No, unfortunately.
Okay,
it's a sad ending.
Okay.
I die in the end.
Spoiler alert, he dies at the end.
And this is a piece of carpet from the hospital.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, but you can get that at my website. Thanks, buddy, for asking me that. You can get the book at my website, planetludwig.com as well. It's a lighthearted, funny look, if it can be funny, about my open heart surgery. And
speaking of lighthearted and funny, this has been a very lighthearted and funny episode, even with all the talk of death and corpses and yeah.
I have to go vacuum my carpet after the show. So
Yeah.
If you're missing a piece, just a little bit of glue. You'll be just fine right there. You've been a great guest. We really love to have you on. We'd love to have you on in the near future. And I myself would be honored to be a guest on your show when
I think first week in September. I think we're scheduled for. So
great, wonderful. You call my agent. We'll set it up.
I'll have my people call your people.
Very good.
Thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks so much, Steve. Good seeing you.
Any other last words for our audience here?
If I have 30 seconds, definitely.
You do.
Yeah. Here's 4 Beatle statues from the '60s, but don't ever dog sit because they might eat Paul McCartney's head.
Oh,
So
wow,
a word to the wise: be careful of where you post your things.
That's hilarious. Well, thank you so much for being on this week, and
Thanks,
we'll have
buddy.
you on
Thanks,
again
Evan.
soon.
Thank you so much, guys. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.